Is about. We will discuss the Dyno Sheet in the future. If you guys get this video to, I don't know, what's a good like goal? Maybe 100 likes. Next video will be me going over all of my dyno results and showing you guys finally what this car put down. First of all, I want to apologize for the non-flattering camera angle. I'm actually not back in California with the car right now. I kind of have a setup for today's video that is very unconventional, and I haven't done it before on the channel, so hopefully it kind of works. And actually, in order to kind of avoid this awkward camera angle, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick. So in my last video, I set my first ever like goal. I asked for 100 likes, and I would reveal to you guys my actual dyno results, and you guys absolutely obliterated that like goal. At the time I'm making this video, I think it's at over 300 likes, which is, you know, obviously 3 times what I asked for. Obviously, I'm going to keep my promise, but I know in the future that I need to raise that goal a little bit higher. I didn't have a great way of presenting the results to you guys, so I went ahead and I'm taking a page from, you know, the teachers that have had to do this for the past year, and I'm actually using 2 computers and Zoom and a PowerPoint to go through some of this stuff with you. And the reason why I'm not just throwing the number out there is because there's a lot of nuances and a lot of things that you need to consider when looking at dyno results, so they need some context. Okay, so for the mod list, the car, obviously I've documented this stuff heavily on my channel. I have a video for every one of these mods, and people still DM me with what's done to my car. So I have it all listed out here. So obviously it's cammed now. It has the upgraded valve train to support the cam. It has JBA long tube headers with Catless mids, a 309 limited slip differential. Of course that doesn't add power, it just changes the power delivery. I have the 392 intake manifold, cold air intake from JLT. I said I had a Frankenstein Borla type catback. That basically just means it's only the mufflers and the rest of my exhaust system is stock, with also E85 with Hellcat Injectors and a dyno tune from Fullblown Performance through ZHTunes. And it actually was through Spankin' Time Performance first, so we're going to go through those results as well. A lot of people don't understand that every dyno reads differently. They like to compare apples to oranges. There's things like Mustang dynos and dyno jets, and they all read differently. And in addition, there's also a bunch of different like correction factors that people don't take into account. For example, there's SAE and STD. I believe it's Society for Automotive Engineers and just standard. People like to advertise the standard correction factor numbers because they typically read higher than SAE. And when I mean they read higher, they base it off of atmospheric conditions that are more ideal. So like lower temperature, better air density, etc. So I'm going to make a couple assumptions here. So this car has been on 2 dynos. One was at MD Automotive and the other was at Fullblown Performance in LA. This isn't necessarily a great assumption, but I'm going to assume that they were calibrated similarly. Very confident actually that the MD Automotive dyno likes to read torque a little bit higher than the Fullblown Performance dyno. With that being said, one reading isn't better than the other unless you like to advertise higher numbers. And as you can see here, I put an example from one of my dyno sheets. You can tell what correction factor it's using. It'll say SAE or STD right here. So before we jump into the cam results, let's talk about what the results were for my full bolt-on car. So the car was full bolt-on on 91 octane without a cam. And on the MD Automotive dyno, the video I made, the standard correction factor was used. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So I'm going to show you the standard results here on the next slide. So the car put down a little over 370 horsepower and over 400 foot-pounds of torque. These are standard correction numbers. Moving on from that, obviously I got it dynoed at Fullblown Performance. However, before I got it dynoed at Fullblown Performance, I actually had an email tune on 91 octane from one of the big Hemi tuners. He was one of the biggest guy for Hemi tuning, and I still see people like going to want to get tuned by him for this cam. You guys know how many issues I had, and I guess it's kind of, you can lead a horse to water situation, because, you know, people, like, I showed that, you know, didn't really work, and I documented how many issues you have, but of course people don't like to listen when the proof is all there. But I'm going to show you guys a clip of the car on the dyno when it had the email tune installed. When it had the email tune installed on Fullblown Performance's dyno, it put down about 400 horsepower and 383 foot-pounds of torque, SAE corrected. So as you can see, there was a dip in how much torque the car put out. Of course, since they were different correction factors, I don't know if it was because of the correction factor changing or if I actually lost torque on that email tune. So have the converted S standard correction factor numbers here, so like 413 horsepower and just shy of 400 foot-pounds of torque. Obviously still not great. To be honest, the air-fuel ratio was absolutely horrendous. I think Alex said it was near the 10s. Alex is the guy at Fullblown Performance, if you're unfamiliar. By the way, got that shirt on right now. Yeah, that email tune, it wasn't good. I didn't have an AFR gauge in the car, so it made it that much harder for the tuner, and it was just running way too rich, stalling issues, etc. When I first got tuned by Fullblown and the actual tuner was spanking time, obviously I switched to Hellcat Injectors so that I could run E85. Just for reference, Alex estimated that E85 added like 10 to 15 horsepower. It's not a super large gain as you see on like the 392. The 5.7 is a lower compression ratio car relative to those. So it's like in the 9s, whereas I think the 392 is at least a compression point higher. And then plus, E85 also very much benefits boosted cars because you can run a little bit more timing because of that higher octane rating. You're less likely to get knock. And just for reference, Alex told me that his stock 392 on his dyno put down about 405 horsepower SAE corrected. I didn't include it in the slides, but a J Green tuned bolt-on 5.7 put down 345 horsepower SAE corrected, so about 60 horsepower less, which makes sense. My previously released numbers, I've posted the dyno sheet before actually. These were also SAE corrected, and it was about 425 wheel horsepower SAE corrected. Now that's the number I released before. I've said this number a ton of times. That wasn't the final number, of course, but if you're curious, it's about 437 horsepower standard corrected. So this is that dyno sheet here. As you can see, there is a nice linear part of this horsepower curve. There was an issue, I guess, with the dyno or the software, and I don't have the torque curve here, but we'll talk about that more in the future. As you can see, it's revving out to about 6,200 RPM, making peak power just shy of 6,000 RPM. So, yeah, these were the numbers I've told you guys about multiple times. Moving on to the final results, the car put down 338 horsepower and 448 torque SAE corrected. Now if you're curious, the standard corrected numbers would be 452 horsepower and 455 horsepower. Now I think that's pretty impressive given that the car is naturally aspirated, relatively low compression, and only pretty much on E85. So we estimated that this tune and the cam and the E85 added around 80 horsepower, which is on top of what I already had with all the bolt-ons, which is pretty good because as you guys know, the numbers don't typically just add on to each other. Like, one thing I do want to show you guys, and this isn't my final dyno sheet, But this does compare like the 6th revision to my email tune. So the blue lines are my email tune, and the red line is the Spankin' Time performance tune. So everybody likes to look at that peak horsepower number, and I always talk about this, I always criticize it because I think it's a really dumb thing to do. People just look at that peak horsepower number and think that's how much power the car makes. In reality, that's not how these motors work. So you also have to focus on the power that it makes in the mid-range. And in addition to putting down 60 more foot-pounds of torque at the peak and actually around 40 horsepower, I gained close to 100 foot-pounds of torque in this mid-range, and around 50-ish horsepower in this mid-range as well. All the way through, you're looking at 3,500 RPM, where there's a gain below it as well, may I add. 3,500 RPM, way past 5,000 RPM. And this is something that people don't want to look at. They want to just see that dyno tune, or they want to see that email tune. They want to rev the piss out of the engine and make less power still. So this car, my car now, is making significantly more power at a much lower RPM than it was before, which is good for reliability reasons and just shows how screwed up my email tune was. So the current state of the car is now tuned by ZHTunes, still full-blown performance. Great drivability. I don't have a photo of that dyno sheet because apparently there was an issue with the way the dyno was reading the numbers, so I have to take the car back to full-blown performance in a couple of weeks here, and I'll also have a new announcement when I get back there. So everybody keeps DMing me, what's next now that you've canned it and it's pretty much good to go. On the left here, you can actually see tires that I purchased off of a buddy on Instagram a few days ago. So they're 17-inch race stars on some 305 Mickey Thompsons. So I'm ready to make this car boogie. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff I want to do with the car in its current state before I do anything else or I get rid of it. So yeah, expect more content, expect some track days, and just having fun with the car. And I do want to add a little conclusion to this video. You guys saw these dyno numbers, you guys saw the torque curves now, you guys saw all this stuff. Don't expect that the car, performs amazing or performs bad based on dyno numbers. As everyone says, as Alex emphasized a lot while I was there, dynos are just a tuning tool. They are not they don't indicate anything else other than air-fuel ratio and how much power that car decided to put down on that day. It really depends on how consistent the car is, how it runs at the track, etc. So, when I take it to a track, it's probably going to be some pretty slow runs at first because I've never been to a track and it's going to be a learning experience for me. But that's, all part of the game. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now you guys can stop blowing up my DMs asking how much power my car is making. To be honest, I never planned on actually releasing the numbers at all. I just wanted to tell you guys a ballpark number, but I was starting to get tired of the messages. So here's the video. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.